One day a young boy named Ryoma, only 11 years old, is shown living alone deep in the forest alongside an enormous number of slime monsters, nearly 1,000 in total. Ryoma calmly explains the different types of slimes under his care, and how each one supports his daily life in its own way. Early in the morning, Ryoma heads out to hunt in the forest. He notes that he usually encounters goblins or bandits, and is often forced to fight them, a routine that reflects his unusual abilities despite his age. That day, however, the forest remains quiet, and nothing stands in his way. The calm breaks when Ryoma hears voices nearby. A group of people are calling out while trying desperately to save their companion, Hughes, who is badly wounded and close to death. Ryoma approaches cautiously, first assuming they might be bandits. Once he sees them clearly, he realizes they are not, though he still cannot understand their situation at a glance. He notices Hughes lying on the ground in pain while the others attempt treatment, without success. Ryoma steps forward and calls out to them. Startled, the group reacts defensively, with one member pointing a sword at him and demanding to know who he is. Ryoma stiffens, while another member questions how a child could be living in such a place. Ryoma becomes self-conscious, thinking to himself that he has not spoken to anyone in years, and that his voice sounds awkward and rough. He then tells them that he has medicine that can save their friend and offers it to them. One of the group approaches carefully, smells the medicine, and confirms that it is genuine and safe. Hughes is given the medicine, and they soon see his condition improve. Though he remains unconscious due to blood loss, the danger has passed, and their leader thanks Ryoma for his help. Ryoma invites them to follow him to his home so they can rest until their companion recovers. As they walk, the group quietly observes him, surprised that a boy dressed like a hunter truly lives alone in the forest. Partway along the path, Ryoma suddenly stops and warns them that a monster is approaching. The group prepares for combat, only to see a large number of slimes moving toward them. As they raise their weapons, Ryoma quickly stops them and explains that the slimes are his companions. The group lowers their swords, apologizes, and continues onward with him. Along the way, the leader remarks that he once had a slime when he was young, his very first companion. Ryoma asks if he is a tamer. The man replies that he is a former tamer from a family that has raised tamers for generations. He mentions having red horses and storm monkeys as companions, leading Ryoma to realize that this man is likely a noble of high standing. Eventually, they reach a massive wall blocking the path. The group assumes the road ends there and wonders where Ryoma's home could possibly be. Ryoma calmly uses magic to open a large opening in the wall, revealing his house beyond and inviting them inside. The group is stunned, realizing he not only uses magic but also created a powerful barrier to conceal his home. Inside, they lay their injured friend on a bed and take a moment to rest. As they look around, they notice the furniture is suited for only one person, and it becomes clear that Ryoma truly lives alone. Reflecting on everything they have seen, they understand that his solitary life is not an exaggeration. Ryoma returns with additional medicine and hands it to them. They thank him, and the leader offers to repay him with money. Ryoma declines, explaining that he makes the medicine himself. This revelation surprises them further, and when they ask if he truly creates the formulas on his own, he confirms it. Pressed again about who he really is, Ryoma becomes flustered and avoids the question by offering them iced water. They are once more surprised when they realize he can use ice magic as well. The leader insists on an answer, and Ryoma finally accepts that he cannot avoid it. He introduces himself as Ryoma and explains that he once lived with his grandfather and grandmother, who passed away 3 years earlier. The leader apologizes and then introduces himself in return, stating that his name is Reinhard Jamil, the Duke of the Jamil Duchy. Ryoma is stunned and hurriedly apologizes, only for the Duke to question why he would do so, reminding him that the debt is theirs, not his. The rest of the group then begins to introduce themselves to Ryoma. One of them steps forward and says his name is Camille, explaining that he is a mage. Another introduces himself as Zeph, an explorer. The third member apologizes for pointing his sword at Ryoma during their first encounter. Ryoma reassures him calmly, saying it is fine and that such caution is only natural. Ryoma then asks what happened to them on the road. The Duke explains that they were ambushed by bandits outside the forest. Ryoma asks if that was the cause of the injury, but the Duke replies that it was not. He explains that a black bear suddenly emerged from the forest and attacked them, and that was what injured Hughes. Camille adds that they managed to defeat the black bear, but their horses were frightened during the fight and ran away. With Hughes badly wounded and needing urgent care, they chose to cut through the forest as a shortcut to the city, which is how they ended up meeting Ryoma. The Duke then asks Ryoma if he may pose another question. Ryoma agrees. The Duke asks why Ryoma is living alone in the forest despite being able to use several types of magic and create potions. He wonders why someone with such abilities would choose such a life. Ryoma explains that he learned everything from his grandparents, who were former adventurers. The Duke asks if that means his family is currently traveling and that Ryoma is waiting for their return. Ryoma replies that this is not the case. He explains that they passed away 3 years ago, and that he has been living alone ever since. Before their deaths, they advised him to move to another village, but as an outsider, he was not welcomed by the villagers. The Duke says he understands the situation, but still finds it difficult to believe that Ryoma managed to survive alone in the forest for so long. Ryoma answers simply that he has been fine and has lived there by himself for 3 years. At that point, Camille takes out a crystal ball used to reveal a person's abilities and confirm whether they are a criminal. They ask Ryoma to try it. The crystal shows that he is not a criminal and reveals his skills including housekeeping, resistance to mental pain, and resistance to physical pain. When they realize that Ryoma possesses these abilities at only 11 years old, the group is left speechless. Seeing this, the Duke resolves that he cannot leave Ryoma alone any longer. Though he has not yet decided how best to help him, he decides that once he returns home, he will discuss Ryoma's situation with his father and his wife, Elise. Several hours later, Hughes finally regains consciousness. With his condition stabilized, the Duke and his men prepare to depart. Hughes thanks Ryoma and introduces himself properly, explaining that he is the Duke's personal guard. He tells Ryoma that if he ever needs anything, he can rely on him. Ryoma thanks him in return, and the group takes their leave, bidding him farewell. After they are gone, Ryoma reveals his true story. He explains that in his previous life, he was an overworked office employee in another world who died from the stress of constant labor. 3 years ago, he was reincarnated into this world as an 11-year-old boy, retaining his abilities, and began taming slimes to survive. The story returns to the present, where Ryoma is counting his slimes and notices that their numbers have grown significantly. As he finishes, he suddenly hears voices calling out to him. When he looks up, he sees Hughes, the Duke, the rest of the team, and this time they are accompanied by the Duke's family and servants. Ryoma welcomes them warmly, clearly pleased to see them again. At that moment, the Duke's father steps forward, greets Ryoma warmly, and introduces himself. Elise, the Duke's wife, follows, thanking Ryoma for saving her husband and his men. The Duke then introduces his daughter, Illyria. She looks around in amazement at the vast number of slimes gathered near Ryoma. Ryoma welcomes them and apologizes that he has nothing prepared to offer them. The grandfather laughs and tells him there is no need for apologies, since they arrived without notice. He mentions hearing that Ryoma formed contracts with all of these slimes. The Duke asks whether their number has increased since the last visit, and Ryoma confirms that they multiplied through splitting. Illyria asks if all of the slimes can truly fit inside his house. Ryoma answers that they can and demonstrates by merging them into a single large slime instead of many smaller ones. The sight leaves everyone stunned, and they remark that no tamer has ever done such a thing. Ryoma explains the method behind it in a practical way, and their amazement only deepens. He then invites them into the house and offers iced water once more. Afterward, the Duke presents Ryoma with a finely crafted watch as a gift, explaining that they noticed it was the one thing missing from his home. Ryoma thanks them and accepts it. The Duke then explains that they came for another reason. Illyria steps forward and asks Ryoma to teach her how to become a skilled tamer like him. She wants to raise slimes but does not know where to begin and asks for his guidance. Ryoma begins explaining the different slime types, surprising them with unfamiliar ones such as cleaner and garbage slimes. He shows how each is used in daily life, drawing particular attention to the cleaner slimes. Illyria decides she wants to raise a cleaner slime. Ryoma hesitates, feeling awkward about explaining how to attract one. He says he will explain only to the men and gathers them aside. The method is uncomfortable to describe, but Hughes states it plainly, explaining that the slime is drawn to water used after bathing, as it reacts to body sweat. The women react immediately, striking him in embarrassment. Illyria goes to bathe, collects the water, and heads to where the slimes gather. When she returns, she has successfully tamed a slime. She is clearly pleased, and Ryoma congratulates her. Back inside the house, Ryoma recalls his first slime, the very first one he tamed, which he named Tabuchi after his childhood friend. Elise then asks Ryoma what he plans to do next. He admits that he has not decided whether to remain there or go elsewhere. The grandfather suggests that, in that case, Ryoma could travel with them to the town of Jamil and return anytime he wishes. After thinking it over, Ryoma agrees to go with them, and the group is pleased by his decision. Ryoma begins preparing his belongings. The Duke offers to have the head butler store them in a dimensional bag, but Ryoma declines, explaining that he has one of his own. The group is taken aback once again, realizing he is skilled in yet another form of magic. Elise, who is also proficient and passionate about magic, eagerly tells him that she would be glad to help him learn more whenever he wishes. That evening, Ryoma gathers everything from his house. The next morning, the head butler brings out the carriages and horses from storage, and they set off. Ryoma spends the journey in comfort. One day, however, heavy rain causes a landslide that blocks the road, forcing them to stop. The Duke considers taking another route, which would delay them by 3 days. Ryoma puts on his rainproof coat and goes out to help. The others worry about him in the storm and urge caution. Using magic, Ryoma turns the mud into stone, and the slimes move it aside, clearing the path. The problem is resolved quickly, and the Duke thanks him. Elise approaches Ryoma, praising him and expressing her pride. Ryoma feels at ease among them, sensing for the first time what it is like to be part of a family. 3 days later, they reach the town without further trouble. Ryoma enters his room and explains that they have arrived in the city of Jimil, a town known for its mining industry. It is the first city he has visited in this world, and the experience leaves him quietly pleased. He notes that despite the town's reputation, the mines produce less each year than they did before. One of Reinhardt's main objectives for this visit is to inspect those mines and determine which should remain in operation and which should be closed. After settling in, Ryoma accompanies the Duke's family to the church to receive a data tablet, a card that records personal information. A woman guides him into a room with a panel and a crystal and asks him to place his hand on it. Once he does, his information appears, allowing him to see his registered skills and traits. Ryoma rejoins the family outside, where the grandfather speaks to him in a calm, serious tone. He advises Ryoma to hide his abilities from others. As a child with powers unlike anyone else's, Ryoma would easily draw attention from those who might try to exploit him. The grandfather explains that the only way to avoid such trouble is to conceal his strengths. However, given how unusual Ryoma's abilities are, that would be difficult. He suggests that Ryoma register with a major guild and quickly rise in rank to secure a higher status. Ryoma is taken aback and does not fully understand. Elise then explains that his abilities far exceed those of others his age, making him stand out in a way that could attract unwanted interest. She urges him to be careful. Eliaria, watching him with admiration, asks about his magical capacity. Ryoma answers that it is 100,000. She reacts in disbelief and asks how he can control magic so well with such a large amount. She explains that her own capacity is around 200,000, yet she struggles to control it. Ryoma is surprised and learns that she descends from a powerful magic user. Eliaria then asks him to teach her how to control magic. Ryoma explains the reasoning process he used to learn, once again leaving everyone impressed by his clear and logical approach. They leave the church and head to the Tamer Guild, where both Ryoma and Eliaria register. The grandfather explains that Ryoma will have difficulty advancing there, since promotion depends on the rank of the tamed beast, and slimes make progression slow. He suggests they move on to the Adventurers Guild instead, confident that it suits Ryoma better. At the Adventurers Guild, Ryoma must take a combat test to register. The family watches closely as the test begins. The first trial involves shooting stationary targets with a bow. Ryoma uses his hunting skills to strike each target dead center with speed and precision, surprising everyone present. The second trial involves moving targets in the form of flying discs, inventions created by someone from another world, the same person who introduced firearms known as Shujan. Ryoma again hits every target accurately. In the middle of the test, the examiner suddenly throws a knife at him. Ryoma blocks it instantly and counters without hesitation. The examiner stops the test, and Ryoma apologizes for reacting so quickly. The examiner laughs and explains that he only wanted to observe Ryoma's response. He admits he was curious why the entire ducal family was watching the test so closely. It is then revealed that the examiner is the guild master himself. In the office, the guild master informs Ryoma that he is now a rank G adventurer, with the potential to rise all the way to rank S. He explains that Ryoma is free to choose quests from the board downstairs. Ryoma goes down and meets the receptionist, who tells him he may take any quest suited to his rank. After looking over the board, he selects a house cleaning job, knowing his slimes can handle it easily. The next day, Ryoma gathers his slimes and sets out. The Duke's family sees him off and wishes him well. He arrives at the house for the job, where a cat person greets him and asks if he is truly there to clean. A strong odor drifts from the house, catching Ryoma off guard. He introduces himself, and the woman introduces herself as Mia, thanking him sincerely for coming. Ryoma quickly understands the situation in the house. A massive amount of garbage has accumulated in the basement due to the waste being dumped there. He begins by using the garbage slime to consume all of the trash. After that, he releases the organizing slime to restore order to the space and then uses earth magic to seal the damaged wall. The entire task is completed smoothly in only a few hours. Mia watches in disbelief, unable to process what she is seeing. When Ryoma asks her what she thinks of the place, she breaks into tears, overwhelmed with relief, and thanks him repeatedly for what he has done. Seeing her reaction, Ryoma feels satisfied and tells her that the job is finished. She agrees and signs the mission completion form. Ryoma says his goodbyes and returns to the Adventurers Guild in high spirits to report his success. The receptionist is surprised to see him back so soon, and even more surprised to learn that the mission is already complete. Ryoma brushes it off as nothing special. When she hands him the reward, he hesitates, asking if the amount is not too much. She explains that the payment is appropriate and that Maya herself requested an increase. Ryoma still feels it is generous, but he signs the documents confirming completion and receipt of the reward. The guild master then calls Ryoma over and takes him into a private room. He remarks that Ryoma seems to have cleaned Mia's house thoroughly. Ryoma asks if he knows Mia, and the guild master replies that she is an adventurer as well, though he never imagined anyone could deal with her basement. When he asks how it was done, Ryoma answers simply that he relied on his slimes and a bit of magic. The guild master nods and tells him that his skills are needed for another job. Ryoma immediately mentions the public toilets request. The guild master is caught off guard and asks how he knew. Ryoma explains that he saw it posted on the board. The guild master then says there is no need for further explanation, and reveals that the task was commissioned by the government. It began after they refused to pay sanitation workers, a situation tied to the recent decline in the city's revenue. Ryoma responds that he heard about the reduced output from the steel mines. The guild master confirms this and explains that the city attempted to cut costs from its management budget. They offered unreasonable justifications, and as a result, no one was willing to take on the work. Ryoma calmly tells him not to worry and says he will prepare and begin the task the next day. The guild master thanks him and assures him that the reward will be substantial. Ryoma then suggests informing the Duke about the issue, saying that he believes the Duke could resolve it. The guild master asks what led him to that thought. Ryoma replies that the Duke's family welcomed and helped him despite not knowing who he was and without expecting anything in return. The guild master agrees and decides they should report the matter. That evening, Ryoma meets with the Duke's family and explains everything that has happened. The Duke reacts with anger and immediately calls for the head butler. He asks whether the government office reports claimed that city expenses had remained unchanged. He states that if Ryoma's account is accurate, then this points to clear embezzlement of public funds and orders an investigation at once. He thanks Ryoma, saying that it is because of him that these crimes were uncovered. The grandfather is equally furious, calling such acts unforgivable. The entire family is visibly upset as they begin to explain to Ryoma why the job existed to serve the public. Those facilities were meant to provide comfort for travelers and steady work for common people who depended on such labor for their income. The next morning, Ryoma heads to the toilets to begin the task. The stench is overwhelming as soon as he arrives. He calmly releases his slimes and assigns them throughout the area. Hours pass as they work together, and by the end, the entire place is restored, clean, and orderly. During the process, Ryoma notices his slimes multiplying at an unusual rate. As he investigates further, he discovers the presence of a waste swamp beneath the site. He immediately heads to the Adventurers Guild to report what he found. By chance, the Duke's entire family is already there, speaking with the guild master. Ryoma explains the situation in front of everyone and reports that the contamination is contained, as the swamp has not spread beyond the area. Elise steps forward first and asks if he is all right. Ryoma reassures her that he is fine, explaining that he cleaned himself thoroughly and made sure not to bring any contamination with him. She clarifies that this is not what she meant and asks whether he feels any pain or physical discomfort. Ryoma is taken aback by their concern and feels a quiet warmth at the fact that someone is worried about his well-being. The guild master explains that the contamination Ryoma discovered is a form of harmful magic that can affect both the body and mind if exposure continues. Ryoma interrupts and states that he wants to handle the mission himself and take responsibility for treating anyone affected. The guild master asks if he still intends to proceed despite knowing how dangerous the contamination is. Ryoma answers that eliminating the source is necessary. He asks only that the area be sealed off so no one enters until the purification is complete. Eliaria voices her concern, saying the task sounds dangerous for him. The grandfather suggests sending a full workforce instead. Ryoma thanks them for their concern, but insists that involving others would only put more people at risk of serious illness. He asks to be allowed to handle it with his slimes. Elise asks if that means he can remain outside the area. Ryoma explains that the slimes cannot manage everything alone, and that he must assist with large surfaces like walls and ceilings. He shows them his skill panel and reassures them that his resistances allow him to endure the work safely. With that settled, Ryoma returns to the site. A full team of adventurers remains nearby solely for protection. He resumes cleaning, working steadily. During the process, Elise and Eliaria arrive with food and potions, worried about his condition. At the same time, the Duke and his men work from their office to address the larger issue, while the guild master remains tense, concerned for Ryoma's safety. Even Jeff, Mia, and their companions come to check on him. Jeff tells him to take a break, and Mia urges him to rest. Ryoma thanks them but says he wants to finish properly before the contamination can harm anyone. He notes that the work is nearly complete and returns to it without delay. Eventually, the purification is finished, and the mission is completed. Relief spreads through everyone involved. Ryoma reports back to the guild, where the guild master praises his work and tells him to prepare for a substantial reward. Exhausted, Ryoma returns home, hoping to finally rest. By the time he arrives, morning has come again. As he walks inside, memories surface of his previous life, of coming home worn down by work, and being welcomed by his mother. This time when he enters, the entire family is waiting for him. They greet him warmly and tend to him without hesitation. Overcome by the feeling, Ryoma finds himself unable to speak. Tears fall as he realizes he is experiencing the warmth of a family once more, something he has not felt since losing his grandmother. He goes to his room and lies down to rest, feeling at peace in this world. At that time, Eliaria and Elise prepare food for Ryoma together with the maids. The head butler offers to wake him, and Eliaria thanks him quietly. When Ryoma wakes and sees the elaborate breakfast laid out before him, he looks surprised and asks if Eliaria truly woke up early to make all of it. She answers that she did, with help from her mother and the others. Hughes adds that she has a request she wants to ask of him. Eliaria, slightly hesitant, asks Ryoma to teach her magic play so she can improve her control, just as he explained before. Ryoma agrees without hesitation and asks if that is why she prepared the meal. When she answers yes, he thanks her sincerely and begins eating with clear appreciation. She asks how it tastes, and he tells her it is delicious, which visibly relieves her. As everyone praises the food, Hughes interrupts by questioning the combination of meat and eggs. The women react at once, and Hughes quickly falls silent, focusing on his meal. After breakfast, the head butler serves Ryoma tea and asks what he wishes to learn next. Ryoma answers that he would like to study offensive magic. Camille immediately responds that he will teach him. Ryoma thanks him, and they move to an appropriate training area. Ryoma asks Eliaria if she specializes in fire and ice magic. She confirms it, and he remarks that both are difficult to control. He explains how ice can form patterns and fire can be shaped like fireworks, then asks her to try. He also asks if she can use water magic. She says she is not skilled with it, but will try. Ryoma demonstrates by creating water and air bubbles that float gently. Eliaria watches with fascination and then attempts it herself, succeeding, though her bubbles collapse more quickly. Ryoma explains that he imagines the water as the viscous fluid inside a slime, which helps maintain its form. Eliaria follows his advice, tries again, and this time succeeds. Pleased with the result, she smiles openly. Ryoma then shows how to create a large bubble, and they pass it between them, sharing the moment. After that, he shapes the magic into a fish that swims through the air, leaving everyone watching in silence. Eliaria thanks him earnestly for teaching her. Ryoma then joins Camille to learn offensive magic. Camille teaches him everything he knows, but Ryoma absorbs it quickly, until Camille runs out of techniques to show him. The head butler steps in and offers to teach him spatial magic. Ryoma agrees eagerly. Camille remarks that Ryoma is fortunate, and Ryoma thanks the head butler. The head butler asks if Ryoma knows any spatial magic beyond storage boxes. Ryoma replies that he can also use teleportation. Asked to demonstrate, he does so, leaving the head butler impressed. He tells Ryoma that he is ready to learn advanced spatial magic, including rotation and home dimension techniques. Ryoma asks if that is truly possible, and the head butler assures him that spatial magic follows consistent principles. He begins with rotation magic, which relies on a clear mental image of the destination. Ryoma succeeds and thanks him. Next comes home dimension magic, an advanced form of storage with far greater capacity. Ryoma practices until he gains stable control, though the effort leaves him exhausted. He asks if this means he can now carry his slimes inside it, and thanks the head butler again. The head butler praises his dedication and suggests returning, noting that it has grown dark without Ryoma realizing it. The following day, they travel to the abandoned North Geol mine to train Eliaria in monster combat. The Duke explains that it is the duty of nobles to protect their land and citizens from threats. Ryoma asks if this applies to women as well. The grandfather answers that it applies to every member of the ducal family. Elias adds that nobles are trained in combat, magic, manners, governance, and economics as part of that responsibility. Ryoma acknowledges this, and Eliaria explains that it is why she will soon go to the royal capital. Hearing this, Ryoma feels a quiet sadness at the thought of being alone again. When they arrive at the mine, he opens his home dimension and releases his slimes. Hughes asks if they are ready, and together, Ryoma and Eliaria enter the mine. The first monster appears inside the mine, and Eliaria is allowed to face it herself. She casts ice arrow and fires, but the attack misses. The monster rushes forward, and she releases another arrow, striking it cleanly and bringing it down. Relief shows on her face as she realizes she has won. Next, it is Ryoma's turn. 4 monsters emerge at once. The group prepares to intervene, but Ryoma calmly tells them he will handle it. Eliaria wishes him luck. Ryoma draws his 2 knives and moves forward, closing the distance in an instant. He evades their attacks with precise steps and brings them down one by one with swift, controlled strikes. Eliaria and the others watch in silence, struck by the speed and accuracy of his movements. His technique leaves no wasted motion. After that, Ryoma and Eliaria continue deeper, defeating monster after monster without difficulty. Once the area is secure, they decide to withdraw from the cave. As they are leaving, Eliaria notices a metal slime nearby. She reacts immediately, surrounding it with an ice barrier before it can escape. She brings it to Ryoma and offers it to him as a gift, thanking him for teaching her magic play. Ryoma hesitates and asks if she is certain. She answers without doubt. Ryoma accepts it with gratitude and thanks her sincerely. They return and report everything to the Duke. The grandfather decides that the guild should be informed of what they discovered in the mine. Outside, Ryoma examines the red soil and senses the presence of iron within it. Using alchemy, he extracts iron directly from the ground. The result draws immediate attention. Everyone watches in disbelief as the metal forms. The grandfather laughs softly and remarks that there is someone he meant to introduce to Ryoma earlier. He brings him to meet Reinbach, the owner of the Morgan Trading Company. Ryoma shows Reinbach the iron he produced. Reinbach inspects it carefully and expresses genuine admiration, calling Ryoma a true alchemist. Ryoma then shows him other items he has created, leaving Reinbach speechless. Ryoma and the Duke agree that Reinbach will handle the distribution of Ryoma's products. Ryoma insists, however, that his involvement remain confidential. Reinbach asks why. The Duke explains that if word spreads about Ryoma's abilities as both an alchemist and creator, people will attempt to exploit him. He also states that all profits should go directly to Ryoma. Ryoma is taken aback and says that is far too much. The grandfather answers calmly that none of them need the money, and that Ryoma deserves what comes from his own work. Ryoma lowers his head in thanks, clearly moved. After returning home, Ryoma tests the metal slime by examining how different attacks affect it. He confirms that physical force and magic have no effect, discovering that only acid can damage it. Not long after, Maya arrives with her adventurer team and calls out to him. Jeff asks if he is ready to leave. Ryoma invites them inside briefly, gathers his slimes, and heads out with them to the next location. As he departs, Ilya wishes him luck in monster hunting. Ryoma and the team arrive at the mines, where the guild master explains the situation. The monsters inside consist mainly of mantises, bats, and small rat creatures. Their numbers are expected to be large, which is the main concern, so he warns them to proceed carefully. Once inside, Jeff mentions that he heard Ryoma was promoted to rank F. Ryoma confirms that his previous job qualified him for the advancement. Jeff tells him that if he performs well during this hunt, he could be promoted directly to rank E. The group splits into 2 teams. While moving through the mine, Mia asks Ryoma how many slimes he controls. Ryoma calmly lists them: 728 sticky slimes, 323 11 acidic slimes, 3033 scavenger slimes, 11 pure slimes, 2 healing slimes, 1 metal slime, and 1 normal slime, 4 3 and 10 slimes. The number leaves everyone stunned. Wolana asks what weapons Ryoma uses. He explains that he usually fights with a bow but can also use daggers, fight barehanded, and use a small amount of offensive magic. Wolana tells him to focus on flying monsters with magic, since he is the only one on the team capable of attack spells. Mia adds that she can use magic as well, though her capacity is limited, while the rabbit girl says she cannot use it at all. Suddenly, Mia senses movement and warns the group. 3 mantises rush them, but the team dispatches them quickly. Some feel disappointed, thinking the mission might be too easy. Mia, however, says it is better this way, noting that a sudden attack by stronger monsters would have been dangerous. As they continue deeper, Wolana notices a strong bat odor filling the cave. Ryoma proposes a plan to eliminate the bats at once and explains it to the team. They agree that if it works, it would be effective. Ryoma throws a sound bomb while simultaneously casting a sound barrier around himself and his companions. The spell prevents them from being affected. When they move forward afterward, they find the chamber filled with dead bats, their numbers far greater than expected. The team praises Ryoma's quick thinking. Ryoma then enlarges a slime and has it consume the remains in one motion. The hunt continues, and after some time, the team takes a break. Outside, they find a tense scene at the guild. Adventurers have gathered, and the receptionist announces that the situation is urgent. The guild master explains that a team encountered goblins inside the mine, and the reports suggest the existence of a massive goblin village with over 500 inhabitants. The revelation shocks everyone. Ryoma states that the goblins must be eliminated quickly before the threat grows. The guild master agrees and orders an immediate goblin purging operation. The goblin village is located deep within the mine. The first phase of the plan involves spreading adventurers throughout the tunnels to block any escape routes. Once the operation begins, Maya and the rabbit girl enter first, drawing the goblins' attention before retreating and leading them toward a predetermined area. Along that path, Ryoma has already prepared traps. As the goblins pursue, they fall into pits filled with acidic slimes and are eliminated almost instantly. Those that avoid the traps are taken down by arrows from the waiting team. Through this coordinated effort, the adventurers systematically wipe out the goblins. As the fighting continues, it becomes clear that the goblins number well over 1,000, far more than anyone initially expected. The adventurers soon face a serious problem. Their arrows begin to run out, while the number of goblins shows no sign of decreasing. Seeing this, Ryoma decides to end the battle himself. He commands his slimes forward and releases a sound bomb at the same time. The adventurers retreat at once and cover their ears. When the attack ends, the goblins have been completely wiped out. Only then do they realize that nearly 2,000 goblins had been hiding in the area. Just as the group begins to relax, a goblin leader appears, accompanied by several advanced goblins. Ryoma reacts immediately, directing his slimes to overwhelm them before they can organize. The threat is eliminated in moments, and the mission finally comes to an end. Before leaving the mine, Ryoma gathers his companions and uses his cleaning slimes to wash away the filth covering them. His friends stare in disbelief as the grime they thought would never come off disappears completely. Even so, many decide to discard their clothes, ruined by the stench and the fighting. Outside the mine, Ryoma encounters the researcher Leben, who is astonished by the healing slime's performance. Leben explains that its healing ability has increased dramatically. Ryoma is surprised, as this development was unintentional. Leben suggests that repeated use on the injured may have caused an evolution, making it far more effective. The adventurers then surround Ryoma, thanking him for saving their lives and for leading the effort to defeat the goblins. They are amazed that he can command so many slimes alone. Watching him accept their gratitude, his companions remark quietly that although he is still a child, he is already a true adventurer. The guild master gathers everyone and expresses his appreciation for completing such a dangerous operation. He promises a large bonus reward, and the adventurers respond with open relief and excitement. That evening, Ryoma travels back to town with his friends. Along the way, they bombard him with questions about his slimes, asking what they eat, and how creatures considered weak can become so powerful. As the wagon moves on, Ryoma approaches Jeff and tells him to rest, saying he must be exhausted from the long journey and constant vigilance. Jeff replies that Ryoma should rest as well, knowing how much effort he put in. Ryoma admits that he never expected so many goblins. Jeff answers that they should have prepared better, but such things happen. He insists on continuing to drive and tells Ryoma not to worry. Ryoma thanks him and leans back to rest, thinking quietly about how different this world is from his past life, and how kind the people around him are. When he finally arrives home, Ryoma parts from his friends and goes inside. He sits with the family and recounts everything that happened during the mission. They thank him for his hard work. Ryoma then says there is something important he wants to discuss. He tells them that he has finally decided what he wants to do. No matter how much he thanks them, he can never fully repay what they have done for him. Because of that, he has decided that it is time to leave and begin living independently. Ilya and the family are taken aback by his words and ask why he wants to leave. Ryoma explains that if he continues to rely on them for everything, he feels he will lose sight of who he should become. He tells them that they allowed him to travel with them, join the guild, and become a proper adventurer, but now he feels he has grown too comfortable and wants to take a step on his own. The mood in the room grows heavy. Outside the door, the Duke's men listen in silence. The maids approach to question them, but Hughes quietly asks them to stay back so he can hear clearly. Elise looks at Ryoma and asks if he intends to leave them for good. Ryoma answers immediately that he does not. He says he cares deeply for all of them and only wants to challenge himself again now that he has begun to feel at ease. Elise listens and replies that if that is truly his intention, then she understands. Ilya reacts with surprise and asks why her mother is not stopping him. Elise answers that just as Ilya wishes to go to the capital, Ryoma also needs his own chance to grow. She adds honestly that she feels he is still far too young and that being pampered at his age is only natural. The Duke speaks up, reminding Elise of an earlier discussion. She hesitates, and both Ryoma and Ilya grow confused. Ilya asks what they are talking about. The grandfather answers calmly, saying they had expected this moment to come. He explains that they have seen many children like Ryoma before. The head butler adds that when Ryoma first arrived in the city as a stranger, he immediately registered with the guilds and worked tirelessly, which was unusual. They expected he would eventually voice such a decision, though sooner than anticipated. The grandfather tells Ryoma they will not stop him, but warns him not to place too much pressure on himself, as excessive effort can be harmful. He then lays out their conditions for approving his choice. Ryoma must keep them informed through letters, visit them from time to time so they can see how he is doing, and never hesitate to ask them for help if he needs it. Ryoma listens carefully and agrees to every condition. Ilya then tells him that she is sad about his decision, but she respects it. She adds one request of her own, asking that they meet again in 3 years. She explains that she will graduate in 6 years, and there will be a long break halfway through. Ryoma accepts her request, and the atmosphere lightens. Elise then says there is one more matter to settle. When Ryoma asks what it is, she tells him that as long as he remains in the city, he will stay at the hotel without exception. Ryoma tries to object, but Elise cuts him off, saying the decision is final. He quickly agrees. Ryoma then asks how long they will remain in the city. They answer that it will be until the grill frogs appear. Ryoma reacts with surprise, recognizing them as creatures whose skins are used in weapon crafting. The grandfather confirms this and adds that their internal organs are used for medicine as well. He explains that they appear every year in large numbers near a nearby lake. Ryoma asks if they plan to use them for combat training. The grandfather answers that they are not the main target. Instead, they are after the lemur birds that gather at the same time. Ryoma admits he does not know what those birds are, so Ilya shows him illustrations in a book. Ryoma is struck by the beauty of their feathers. Elise explains that their calls are just as beautiful, and that the birds are highly valued because of their incredible speed. She adds that they are extremely difficult to catch, making successful taming rare. Ilya says that when the birds gather, they almost completely cover the lake. Ryoma grows excited at the thought of witnessing such a sight, and the family tells him that he must come with them when the time arrives. Ryoma agrees at once to go with them that day, and Ilya shares his excitement. The Duke then asks what Ryoma truly means by wanting to live alone. Ryoma explains that he plans to live as an adventurer in the city, build connections with others, continue training himself, and start his own business. He mentions an idea to offer a laundry service using his cleaning slimes, capable of removing even goblin filth. As he finishes speaking, the Duke's men and the maids enter the room and voice their support, saying the idea would certainly succeed. The grandfather looks at them and asks if they were listening in. Hughes starts to respond, but Camille cuts him off, telling him not to blame everything on him. One of the maids explains that such a service would be highly profitable, since adventurers often discard equipment once it becomes too filthy or fault-smelling. Another agrees, saying that if Ryoma can clean it, people will gladly pay. The head butler expresses his agreement, and the grandfather adds that he will speak with the owner of the Morgan Trading Company, who should be able to assist. The Duke then asks Ryoma for a small favor. When Ryoma asks what it is, the Duke explains that since Ryoma will remain in the city, they would like him to periodically check the abandoned mines to ensure monsters do not settle there. Ryoma accepts easily, calling it a simple task. Even as he speaks of independence, he realizes he is still being supported, and he thanks them, feeling grateful to have people who care for him. The following day, Ryoma and Elia visit the Morgan Trading Company to discuss the plan. The company's president is deeply impressed, especially by the existence of a slime capable of cleaning even goblin filth. He praises Ryoma's ideas and says he can already picture the project's success. He suggests Ryoma register with the Merchant Guild, believing it suits him well and will bring substantial profit. He urges Ryoma to go register immediately. Ryoma agrees, asking if it would be an inconvenience. The president laughs it off and says they are practically family now. On the way to the guild, he tells Ryoma that he intends to support the project fully, which excites Elia as well. At the guild, Ryoma introduces himself and says he wishes to register. The woman behind the counter introduces herself as Glees, the guild master, and confirms that he intends to start a cleaning service. When Ryoma agrees, Glees turns to the president and remarks that registration will help avoid future taxes and penalties once profits increase. Together, they explain the plan. Glees listens and tells Ryoma she likes his way of thinking, calling it an excellent idea. She approves his registration. The president then asks about selecting a shop location. Glees sighs lightly and produces a map, offering a property at a low price due to certain issues. They visit the site and find a large, ruined building. The president explains that it once served as both an inn and a warehouse before a fire destroyed it. Ryoma studies the map and realizes the location is ideal, positioned between residential areas, the Adventurers Guild, and the Industrial District. He decides to purchase it. The president assures him he will handle the paperwork, clarifying that he will take a commission and also lend experienced employees to help start the business. With that settled, Ryoma begins restoring the building. With help from his friends and the Duke's men, the shop is cleaned, repaired, and prepared. When the work is finished, Elia suggests adding flowers and herbs to bring more life to the area. Ryoma agrees, calling it a wonderful idea. They carry it out and head home. Along the way, Ryoma begins thinking about hosting a grand opening for the shop. At home, Ryoma tells the Duke's family that he has decided to hold an opening ceremony for his shop, and hopes they will attend. He also goes out to personally invite the Adventurer Guild Master, his fellow adventurers, and the Merchant Guild Master. Everyone responds warmly and promises to be there. Later, Renback rides in a carriage with his sons on the way to the shop. They are impressed by everything they see, even reacting with interest to the shop's name. Inside, Ryoma prepares food for the gathering with the help of two maids, while Elia assists alongside them. When everything is ready, Ryoma thanks them for their help. Renback and his sons arrive soon after. The sons quietly assume Ryoma must be related to the Duke's family, but their father corrects them. Ryoma steps forward to welcome them. The Duke introduces the two young men as Ryoma's new assistants, and Ryoma greets them in return. Renback explains that despite their age, they previously served as branch manager and deputy manager of one of his company's most successful branches, the Luyum branch. Ryoma leads them inside and explains how the shop operates. He shows them the special laundry bags and explains that customers purchase one first to place their dirty clothes inside. The bags come in different sizes, are reusable, and are priced accordingly. Once the clothes and payment are received, customers are given a claim receipt needed for pickup later. The filled bags are stored on shelves in a separate room, where the cleaning slimes handle the work. Ryoma asks if they have heard of cleaning slimes before. They reply that Renback mentioned them briefly. Ryoma then shows them the process directly. The cleaning slime washes the clothes, the metal slime presses them, and the sticky slime folds and sorts them according to the receipts. The two brothers watch closely, clearly impressed. Ryoma finishes the explanation and asks if they have any questions. They answer that they do not, for now. As they move on, Ryoma wonders privately whether the work feels too basic for them, given their previous positions. He continues showing them the rest of the shop, including the living quarters. Soon after, friends begin arriving. Ryoma asks Clara and Cole to help with the party, and they agree. The gathering goes smoothly, and everyone enjoys themselves. Ryoma gives a short speech, thanking everyone for coming and for supporting him. Applause follows, and the atmosphere remains warm. The next morning, Ryoma worries that few customers might come on the first day. Clara and Cole arrive and greet him, and they begin preparing the shop together. Ryoma heads to the Adventurers Guild to announce the opening. When he arrives, he finds that the news has already spread. He learns that Mia and Wilana came early and put up posters throughout the city. Ryoma takes a herb gathering quest and registers it with Malene. She asks if he still plans to work as an adventurer now that he has his own business. He answers lightly and moves on. He then checks the abandoned mines as requested, removing any monsters he finds. After that, he collects the herbs gathered by his slimes and submits them to the guild, receives the reward and returns to the shop. When he arrives, he is surprised to find the store crowded with customers. He immediately joins Clara and Cole to help. Together, they work efficiently, and the customers leave satisfied. At the end of the day, the shop closes, and Ryoma thanks the team for their effort. As things settle, Ryoma grows concerned that Clara and Cole work non-stop from morning until night. He worries about them suffering from overwork, as he once did in his previous life. He tells them he plans to hire additional staff to reduce the burden. When he asks their opinion about hiring 4 more people, Clara agrees it would help, given the shop's growing popularity. Cole adds that the Merchant Guild may also entrust Ryoma with more responsibilities. Ryoma thanks them and heads straight to the Merchant Guild, telling them to rest after finishing the sales calculations. Ryoma goes to the guild, where Glees asks how business went that day. He tells her that it went so well they were overwhelmed with work. Glees smiles and says it sounds like he came to look for new employees. Ryoma admits she is perceptive. She replies that experience makes such things obvious. She tells him not to worry, and says she will gather suitable candidates so he can choose whoever he wants. Ryoma thanks her and returns home. Back at the residence, he tells the family about everything that happened during the shop's opening day. The Duke calls it a great success. Ryoma answers that it is not complete yet, explaining that he wants to ensure customers are truly satisfied so they will return. Elia reassures him, saying she is confident everything will turn out well. The Duke then suggests that Ryoma visit the town guard next. Ryoma is surprised and asks why. The Duke explains that the guard is made up mostly of men who constantly need their uniforms cleaned, which could become a stable source of income. Ryoma understands and thanks him for the advice. Later, Ryoma goes to his room to rest. As he is about to settle in, Elia calls out to wish him good night. Ryoma lies down feeling calm and content. In the days that follow, the shop remains crowded, with customers leaving satisfied and pleased by how clean their belongings are. Ryoma visits the Merchant Guild, where Glees tells him that she has gathered candidates capable of handling accounting, and that he should be able to hire someone immediately. Ryoma thanks her, and she replies that this is simply how things should work, since business matters naturally belong to the Merchant Guild. Ryoma meets the gathered applicants, many of whom are surprised to see him and whisper among themselves about who the young boy might be. Ryoma greets them and introduces himself as the owner of Bamboo Cleaning Services. The announcement leaves them stunned. After he explains the nature of the business, most of the candidates leave. Ryoma turns to those who remain and asks for their names and any conditions they might have. An older man introduces himself as Phi and presents his daughter Lei. He explains that his leg is injured, which could be a problem. Ryoma answers calmly that it is not an issue and asks about their salary expectations. Phi replies that they only wish to live decently. Ryoma then asks Lei if she has any requests, and she asks whether they could live at the workplace or somewhere inexpensive. Ryoma tells her that staff dormitories are already prepared. Ryoma then asks one final question, noting that they seem physically capable and are carrying weapons. Phi and Lei are surprised by his observation. Phi admits they were once assassins but explains that it was long ago, and then tells Ryoma their full story. Ryoma listens and asks when they can start work. They are surprised that he accepts them without hesitation. Ryoma explains that if the guild master deemed them suitable, then he sees no issue. They agree to start immediately, and when Ryoma asks if they can also handle store security, they accept gladly. He takes them to the shop, where they admire the building and its popularity. Ryoma asks them not to overwork themselves, and they begin their duties. Ryoma introduces them to Clara and Cole, assigning Fi to reception and Lai to handling the laundry. The workflow improves at once. At the end of the day, Ryoma thanks everyone and asks Clara and Cole to calculate the profits. He then heals Fei's leg using the healing slime, restoring it completely. Fi thanks him deeply. Ryoma shows them their living quarters, which they find comfortable and well prepared. When Ryoma receives the financial report, he is surprised to see profits higher than the first day. Cole explains that as word spreads, demand will grow further, especially given the town's industrial nature. He suggests expansion to other cities in the future. Ryoma says it feels early to discuss that, but agrees to consider it. Ryoma informs Clara and Cole that Fi and Lei will also serve as security, and that this responsibility should be included in their pay. They accept with gratitude, and the second workday ends peacefully. The following day, Ryoma speaks briefly with Ilya, assuring her that the store now has sufficient help. He heads to the shop, which once again fills with customers early. Wanting to reward his team, Ryoma prepares pizza and arranges staggered breaks so everyone can rest. The gesture lifts their spirits, and the day concludes smoothly. When Ryoma checks the sales, he finds that they have increased by half again over the previous day. Everyone is pleased, and Lee remarks that the project will grow far beyond this in time. Ryoma considers hiring additional staff, and shares the idea with Clara and Cole. Clara agrees that it is a wise choice, and Cole adds that the Merchant Guild will certainly assist as it always has. Ryoma then mentions that he would also like to hire a cook, and asks whether the guild could help with that as well. When they ask why, he explains that everyone is constantly busy, and having someone responsible for meals would make daily life easier. He adds that good food matters especially when people are working hard. Ryoma goes to see Glees and explains his request. She greets him warmly, exchanges a few words with him, and then asks how many people he needs. Ryoma answers that he wants 3 more employees, along with a cook to prepare meals for the staff. On the third day, Glees brings him 3 new workers named Fina, Maria, and Jane. The arrangements are quickly settled, and the 3 are surprised to learn how young Ryoma is and that he owns the store. Glees then introduces Selma, the cook. Selma explains that she previously worked at high-class hotels, and everyone agrees to work under Ryoma and live in the store's dormitories. Glees comments that if things continue at this pace, Ryoma should consider opening a branch in another city, and suggests discussing it later when he has time. Ryoma replies that it is still too early, but Glees insists that the timing is ideal and encourages him not to hesitate. With the new staff in place, the store continues its promotions, and a week passes with steady success. Business remains strong, customers are satisfied, and the employees work smoothly together. Everything progresses without issue. During that time, the Duke's family visits the store and observes Ryoma from a distance. They are pleased by what they see. The Duke remarks that Ryoma has once again exceeded their expectations. When Ryoma notices them, he approaches and welcomes them warmly. After that, Ryoma visits Rinback to ask how the store is doing. Rinback answers that business is excellent, especially after Ryoma accepted the 2 assistants and hired additional staff, which made management far smoother. Rinback is pleased and praises his judgment. Ryoma admits that business has grown so fast that it has started to worry him. Rinback then explains that he actually called Ryoma over because of a new business opportunity. Ryoma listens as Rinback points out that Ryoma is already supplying metal ingots, sticky slime thread, and waterproof fabric on a regular basis. He asks whether Ryoma would be willing to supply them in much larger quantities. Ryoma does not immediately understand, so Rinback reminds him that the frog outbreak season is approaching. Ryoma acknowledges this, and Rinback continues by explaining that frog skin is used to make armor sold on the market, while their internal organs are used in medicine. Because of this, many adventurers gather near the lake during this season, which sharply increases demand for waterproof clothing and boots. Ryoma understands and says he will begin production immediately. Rinback is clearly satisfied and thanks him. Later, Ryoma is at home feeding iron powder to one of his slimes. Ilya notices and asks why he is doing that. Ryoma explains that he is experimenting to see whether it might turn into an iron slime. Ilya understands and asks whether he is still producing waterproof fabric inside the cave. Ryoma confirms that the cave is the best place to avoid noise and disturbances. Ilya asks if she can accompany him, and Ryoma agrees, though he warns her it may be tiring. At the cave, Ryoma learns her reason. Ilya explains that she wants to practice the violin there, where she can play freely and sincerely. Ryoma is surprised to learn about her talent, and asks why she loves playing so much. Ilya explains that the lemur birds gathering at the lake are highly sensitive to music, and that music plays an important role in taming them. Ryoma listens as she explains that the birds communicate through sound, and if they respond positively to music, they will accept a taming contract. Ryoma says this is the first time he has learned about this. Ilya tells him to focus on his fabric work while she continues practicing. As she plays, the music fills the cave, and both Ryoma and the slimes remain quietly absorbed in the sound. After finishing the fabric, Ryoma sits beside Ilya. She compliments how quickly he finished his work, and he praises her playing in return. He notes that the fabric will take time to dry and suggests that they play together in the meantime. Ilya reacts with clear happiness. Ryoma then uses earth magic to create a small stone sculpture shaped like Ilya. She is stunned by the likeness and thanks him sincerely, taking it with her. He proceeds to make small sculptures for each member of the family as well. When they return home, the family sees the figurines and reacts warmly. Ryoma says he is glad they like them. Elise thanks him and tells him how much she appreciates the gift. The Duke suggests that Ilya take the mini sculptures with her when she goes to school, so she will not feel lonely. Ilya agrees happily and asks Ryoma to make a sculpture of himself as well. Ryoma becomes embarrassed but agrees. The next day, Ryoma checks on the shop and finds everything running smoothly even in his absence. Seeing that there is no immediate need for him there, he returns to the cave to produce more fabric. While waiting, he resumes combat training with the slimes, refining their coordination and fighting ability. After finishing the training, Ryoma notices a change. The slime he had been feeding iron powder has transformed. Using appraisal, he confirms that it has become an iron slime. He realizes that while consuming various metals creates a metal slime, consuming only iron produces an iron slime instead. Ryoma is pleased, having uncovered the mechanism behind their creation. Later that day, Ryoma returns to the shop. Fina greets him and points out that the cleaning slimes have split, doubling their numbers. She is confused, but Ryoma reassures her that this will only improve efficiency. He then joins the staff, who are reviewing the day's sales. Clara reports that profits have increased again, this time tripling compared to the previous day. Ryoma and the entire team are left staring at the numbers in disbelief. After that, Ryoma thanks the employees and tells them that the results are due to their efforts. Cole responds that working hard is simply part of their job and nothing unusual. Ryoma asks if anyone has any concerns, but they laugh and say they cannot think of a single problem. Hearing this, Ryoma grows uneasy and realizes he has overlooked something important. He thinks to himself that he forgot to give them time off and feels troubled by the thought. Fi notices his expression and asks what is wrong. Ryoma apologizes and says he failed to give them proper rest days. The staff looks confused and asks what he means. When Ryoma mentions vacations, they react with surprise. One of them asks if he means scheduled days off. Ryoma answers that this should be obvious. He explains that they could either close the shop one day a week or rotate rest days. The employees react with open joy, which only confuses him further. Clara explains that time off is extremely rare for workers, and that most people are paid very little and lose wages if they miss a day. Ryoma tells them that such practices have no place in his store. He explains that his goal is for everyone to work comfortably and take pride in what they do. When the cook announces that the food is ready, everyone gathers to eat together. Afterward, Ryoma heads to the Adventurers Guild and meets Malene. She greets him and assumes he is there for guild work. Ryoma confirms this and says the store can function without him for now. As he looks over the board, Malene calls him back and tells him about a mission she thinks he will like. She explains that a group of adventurers from Sikkim port has arrived in town, claiming to have captured a very rare slime. Ryoma reacts immediately and asks for details. Malene explains that they tried to sell the slime to the Tamer Guild, but were turned away. Ryoma is surprised and asks if the slime is still available. When she confirms it is, he asks where they are and heads out at once. Ryoma arrives at a quiet, nearly abandoned location and hesitates before entering. Inside, he finds the adventurers and introduces himself. One of them reacts harshly and tries to mock him, but the others apologize. Ryoma says he understands their frustration, knowing they were unable to sell the slime. The man admits that the guild truly refused it. Suddenly, the same man grabs Ryoma by the collar in anger, accusing him of mocking them. Moments later, he collapses, breaking down and calling himself a fool. His companions quickly take him outside. The group's leader then introduces himself as Shin and introduces his partner Kai. Shin asks why Ryoma wants the slime. Ryoma answers simply that he wishes to buy it since they cannot sell it elsewhere. Kai asks why he would want such a slime. Ryoma explains that he studies and collects slimes, and if it is truly rare, he wants it. Shin replies that they would be grateful if he bought it. When Ryoma asks about the price, Shin admits they cannot decide, since the Tamer Guild called it worthless. Ryoma asks to examine it first and promises to buy it if it is something he does not already have. Kai brings out the container. When Ryoma opens it, he sees a strange red liquid inside. He has never seen anything like it before. After a brief look, he tells them he will buy it. He gives them 2 gold coins, leaving them stunned. Kai asks if he is certain. Ryoma says he is grateful to have obtained a new slime species and thanks them. Before leaving, he advises them about the upcoming frog season as a way to earn money while they are in town. They thank him and part ways. Ryoma takes the slime to the abandoned mines to observe it safely. He forms a taming contract, which succeeds. Upon appraising it, he learns that it is called a blood slime, named for its appearance. It possesses the skill bloodsuck, meaning it feeds on blood. Ryoma considers the ability useful and notes its potential in combat. Later, Ryoma sits with Ilya as she tells him that the family plans to begin teaching her taming magic the next day. She asks if he would like to learn alongside her. Ryoma agrees at once, saying it would be valuable knowledge, and feels genuine excitement at the thought. The next day, the entire family gathers at a suitable training ground. Elise asks Ilya and Ryoma whether they understand taming magic. Ilya answers that taming is about communicating properly with a monster and building a strong bond. Elise agrees and explains that today they will learn shared sensory magic. Ryoma looks surprised, so she adds that sharing senses makes it easier to receive information from monsters and understand when they are in danger. The Duke explains that this magic is unique to taming and is difficult to apply to summoning. When Ryoma questions why, the Duke clarifies that summoned creatures are connected by only a single link, which makes shared perception unstable. The grandfather adds that using shared senses effectively requires experience and time spent with one's monsters. Even so, today's training will be done with birds. Ilya asks if they will not be using the slimes they brought. Elise answers that slimes are unsuitable for this lesson, since it is hard to judge the effect. The Duke explains that even if senses were shared with a slime, there would be no meaningful sight, sound, smell, or taste to perceive. Elise instructs them to begin and tells them to connect with the birds. The birds are released, and both Ryoma and Ilya focus. Ryoma succeeds almost immediately, and Ilya follows soon after. Elise tells them the next step is to share senses, explaining that no spoken spell is needed, only concentration and a clear mental link. At first, neither fully understands. Ryoma focuses intently as Elise advises him to picture what the bird is seeing. To him, it feels similar to observing through a distant device. As the connection forms, he succeeds, but the sudden shift in perspective unsettles him. Elise, the Duke, and the grandfather all react with surprise. The Duke remarks that Ryoma's progress is remarkable. Ryoma explains that he believes the connection worked because he can see himself through the bird's eyes. The grandfather praises him, noting that this magic is known to be difficult. The Duke reassures Ryoma that the discomfort is normal and advises him to close his eyes and focus solely on the bird's vision. Ryoma follows the advice, and the sensation becomes manageable. Ilya struggles more, finding the experience strange and difficult. Ryoma realizes privately that his ease comes from imagining familiar concepts from his past, while Ilya has no such reference. As training continues, Ryoma's bird takes flight, and the view from above fills him with quiet excitement. After some time, they pause for tea. By the end of the session, both Ryoma and Ilya have successfully mastered shared sensory taming magic. The grandfather praises their progress. The Duke admits that he expected this lesson to challenge Ryoma, but once again, Ryoma exceeds expectations. Elise asks Ryoma if this was truly his first time connecting senses with a monster. He confirms it was. She asks if he felt anything unusual, and he answers that he did not. She tells him that this suggests a strong affinity with bird-type monsters. Ryoma asks what she means, and the Duke explains that every tamer has natural compatibility with certain types. Ryoma says he is confident his strongest compatibility lies with slimes. The Duke agrees, pointing out that such a bond is evident from the number he has tamed. The grandfather adds that understanding one's affinity is what allows a tamer to truly excel, and that experience is essential. Ryoma then asks the grandfather what his own specialty is. The grandfather answers that his strength lies in raising reptiles. He explains that while he cannot tame many at once, he can manage at least one exceptionally powerful creature. The Duke adds that his own specialty is four-legged monsters, though bird-type creatures remain difficult for him. As Ryoma turns his attention to Elise, a powerful presence suddenly appears, making him tense. Elise reassures him and apologizes for the surprise, explaining that the creature is Lowarg, her tamed beast. Ryoma asks if it is a legendary monster. Elise clarifies that it is a Fenrir. She explains that while Fenrir are legendary beasts, this one is still young. It resembles a wolf, can use ice magic, and is undeniably powerful. Ryoma is left stunned and comments on how incredible it is for a monster to wield magic like that. Elise explains that Lowarg is the leader of its pack, which allowed her to tame around 20 Fenrir-type monsters. She then adds that she also controls nearly 100 mutant wolves. Ryoma is left speechless, and Elise simply says that mutant wolves are her specialty. The Duke remarks that Elise is among the most skilled tamers in the country. He admits that watching her abilities once gave him an inferiority complex. Elise responds that he was always more interested in swordsmanship, and that he does not lack talent himself. The Duke replies that compared to her and her father, he never felt truly suited for taming. Ryoma remains overwhelmed by Elise's strength and the sheer scale of her monsters. Seeing him lost in thought, Elia asks what is wrong. Ryoma replies that he was wondering how he ended up surrounded by such extraordinary people. Elise tells him that if he finds them impressive, then he has yet to see Reinbach at his best. She explains that Reinbach controls fewer than 20 mutant monsters, but nearly half of them are dragons. Ryoma is completely stunned. The grandfather laughs and downplays it, saying he was simply fortunate. He explains that his first monster was exceptionally strong, and the other dragons eventually followed its lead. Even so, he only summons them in extreme situations, as the chaos would otherwise be uncontrollable. Ryoma says he understands. When he asks what the mutants usually do, the grandfather explains that they live in mountainous territory owned by the kingdom, guarding it from dangerous monsters that might escape. Elise adds that her wolves guard a different mountain rich in valuable medicinal herbs, preventing hunters from entering. With everyone rested, she suggests returning to training. Several days later, Ryoma sits in his shop with his adventurer friends, discussing the approaching frog outbreak. They explain that the season is about to begin, with the peak expected in 3 or 4 days. Maya reacts with excitement, talking about the profits to be made. The group shares the anticipation. Jeff tells Ryoma they came to ask him something and asks about the uniform he wore during the public toilet cleanup. They want to know where to get it so they can avoid getting soaked while hunting frogs. Ryoma tells them to visit the Morgan Import Company and mention his name. They thank him and leave immediately. Later, Ryoma sits with the family at home. The Duke asks if he has heard the news, and Ryoma confirms that he has. Ilya excitedly mentions the birds gathering at the lake to hunt frogs and talks about taming them. Elise says they plan to head to the lake the next day, and Ryoma agrees to prepare. That night, Ryoma plays the guitar alone in his room to help with bird taming. He reflects that his skill is still limited due to lack of experience. As he plays, sadness sets in as he remembers that once the season ends, he will part ways with the Duke's family. The next morning, they set out for the lake. Along the way, Ryoma encounters Shin's adventurer group. He greets them and tells the Duke's family to go on ahead. Shin apologizes awkwardly for his earlier behavior, and thanks Ryoma for his help. They part ways soon after. Ryoma runs to the lake, where the Duke and his family are already waiting. When he arrives, he stops in awe, taken by the sight of countless birds filling the sky as adventurers gather frogs along the shore. The Duke notices someone attempting to tame the birds and directs Ryoma and Elia to watch closely. The man plays music, but the sound is harsh and unsettling. Frustrated when the birds do not respond, he lashes out at them. They immediately retaliate with magic, forcing him to flee in panic. Ryoma is surprised to see the birds using wind magic. As the man runs toward the family's position with the birds in pursuit, Ryoma and Camille step in, raising earth barriers to shield him and stop the attack. Moments later, the birds release an overwhelming sound that strikes everyone in the area with intense pain. Ryoma alone remains unaffected. While others struggle, he scans the sky, searching for the source, and quickly identifies an evolved bird emitting the sound. He moves at once and forms a sound barrier around it, cutting off the magic. With the effect neutralized, the birds scatter and retreat from the area. The Duke and his men begin assisting those who were affected. Once the situation settles, the Duke thanks Ryoma for his quick action. Ryoma asks what exactly happened, and those around him stare in disbelief that he was not harmed at all. The grandfather explains that the bird they encountered is extremely rare, appearing only once every 10 years. It is capable of both wind magic and black magic, making it especially dangerous. Ryoma then recalls his resistance to mental pain and realizes that it protected him from the sound. When Ilya asks how he remained unaffected, he explains that his skill shielded him from the pain. The Duke surveys the area and confirms that the birds have vanished after the incident. Ryoma turns to the scouts and asks whether they are supposed to locate the birds by finding their nest. One of them confirms this, but explains that it will be difficult, since these birds travel far greater distances than most monsters, making the search area vast. Ilya decides to wait at the lake until the birds return, and Ryoma agrees to stay with her. Ryoma and the family remain by the lake until evening, waiting for the birds to return. As time passes with no sign of them, discouragement begins to set in. Ilya turns to Ryoma and says quietly that the time when they will each go their separate ways is drawing near. Ryoma stiffens, unsure how to respond. He is not used to moments like this, and he searches his memory for words he once read in a similar scene. Just as he is about to speak, Elise gently says that they will surely meet again and asks Ryoma if he agrees. He answers at once that he does, and Elia visibly relaxes. She asks him to promise that they will write to each other. Ryoma agrees without hesitation. Hughes begins teasing him relentlessly until Ryoma finally snaps, knocks him to the ground, and then regains his composure. At that moment, the birds suddenly return to the lake. Ryoma immediately spots the rare bird among them. He tells the Duke that he intends to move a short distance away. When asked why, Ryoma explains that the rare bird may react to his presence and release its sound again, potentially harming those nearby. Ilya refuses to let that concern affect her. She steps forward and declares that she will not allow Ryoma's presence to become an excuse for failure. She asks the birds to watch her closely as she begins. Ilya starts playing her music. The melody is gentle and clear, capturing the attention of everyone present, including the adventurers. The birds respond, joining her song. Seeing this, Ryoma reminds her to form the taming contract. She does so successfully, and joy spreads across her face. The crowd erupts in praise, amazed that she managed to tame 9 birds at once. Then it is Ryoma's turn. He takes out his guitar, drawing eager attention. Among the flock, the rare bird remains. Ryoma steadies himself and begins to play. His music carries smoothly across the lake, rich and balanced. Those listening feel that the sound itself is something uncommon. The birds react at once, gathering around him, with the rare bird among them. When Ilya reminds him about the contract, Ryoma completes it without trouble. Applause follows, and voices rise in congratulations. That night, a grand feast is held to celebrate Ilya's success, and to mark Ryoma's departure. Ilya plays the flute during the gathering, and her performance leaves Ryoma quietly impressed. He realizes then that his time with the Duke's family is nearly at an end. Later, Ryoma and Ilya go to his room and talk for a while. Before leaving, Ilya presents him with a ruby necklace. Ryoma is startled. She explains that her mother gave it to her on her 10th birthday, and asks him to keep it until they meet again. Ryoma hesitates, then accepts, promising to treasure it. As she leaves, he wonders what he could possibly give her in return. He then offers her 2 of his slimes, telling her they are the most valuable things he owns and that they will be useful to her. Ilya laughs, and Ryoma worries that he may have made a mistake. She quickly apologizes, accepts them, and thanks him sincerely, promising to take good care of them. The next morning, the Duke and his family prepare to depart and head back to their homeland. They say their goodbyes to Ryoma, bringing their time together to a close.